Hi everyone, my name's George and welcome to another edition of Nirvana Sessions. Today we would have loved to have provided you an opportunity to meet one of the world's most acclaimed turntable designers, but unfortunately we couldn't find anybody that fit that description, so we've ended up with Mark. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, George.
But I better do that again.
No, that's fine.
Actually, I must say, as the designer of Doehmann Audio, you not only fit that description, but in my mind, you define that description. So thanks very much for making yourself available.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
and
George.
welcome to the Nirvana Sessions.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, apart from your Hollywood leading man looks, people know you for exceptional turntables.
Right.
Now, there's a current Helix range under the Doehmann Audio company that's been around for a few years, and there's also the famous turntable project in the early 2000s that I think shot you to the awareness of the audiophile community. But what people may not know is that you've been making turntables since the early 80s.
Yeah.
Tell us about your first continuum turntable, the Doehmann and Geshu Continuum.
Well, literally the genesis of that one was a friend had a high-end turntable at the time, which was an Ariston RD11S with the SME tone arm and a Shure V15 cartridge and some top-of-the-line amplification at the time from Yamaha, monoblocks when they were doing their serious high-end, and some Bowers and Wilkins loudspeakers. And I was introduced to him as a young lad, and I went over there and listened to it, and it absolutely floored me. Was
that your first experience?
First experience of proper,
exceptional.
Exceptional. And I started to covet the turntable and lust after it. But the difficulty is that it was expensive. So I was fortunate in having access through my father to a wonderful workshop, engineering workshop at an airline, and it enabled me to start to DIY, tinker. And at the time, there was a lot of movement of people throwing out idler wheel turntables, idler drives, the Commonwealths.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't too difficult to locate. Now they're rare and very expensive. But at the time, they were just seen as surplus. So I started collecting those from various sources, stripping them down, refurbishing them, learning how they worked, and basically built a turntable that sounded what I considered pretty good.
Yeah, right.
So that was the genesis.
And that was in 1980?
Would have been early 80. And then I gradually started tinkering more and more with various designs. Really, some sounded better than others. The old Thorens turntables at the time, Regas, were coming through. They had a different sound. The Lins, of course, and eventually I built with a friend, Mark Gussu. A shout out to Mark; he's still about. We built this turntable and we called it the Continuum.
Right. Well, we happen to have a photo of you and Mark Gussu around 1982.
This one
with one of your Continuum turntables that now we're showing all the viewers. Now, I want to just mention what's on everyone's mind looking at this photo. What did it feel like to be an audiophile sex symbol in the
80s? With hand-knitted jumpers, thanks, Mum. Yeah, we were nerdy. I wouldn't actually say sex symbol, but musically, it certainly was stimulating, but visually, no. But yeah, look, it was my hobby.
What wonderful, Mark. Well, as you may well remember, when you just touched on it just earlier, when CD was released, analog virtually died overnight. I mean, I called it the dark ages back then. Everybody was literally throwing out their vinyl records and their turntables on their nature strip for trash collection. Yet as the world unanimously moved in that direction, your involvement in analog replay intensified. In some ways, you became obsessed with improving and optimizing a technology that many considered was obsolete and irrelevant. So what drove your interest in this rather specific area?
Well, I actually tried to jump on board the CD revolution. I mean, how could we not, with the incredible marketing and push to move across to, you know, perfect sound forever. And so people started buying the early CD players. I heard some amazing early CD players, you know, big professional size Technics players. And I bought one for myself and bought a few CDs, and didn't really connect with it in my own system. And the promise of the, you know, scratch-free, pop, crackle-free sound, incredible dynamic range and everything, a lot of promises there. But I felt that the vinyl medium still connected more emotionally, and that there was more life left in the old technology. And it actually spurred me on to try and lower the noise of vinyl, let more of the music and dynamics come through. And I think that's really, if it wasn't for CD, I wouldn't have been motivated to get under the hood.
Yeah. And I think quite a few people had that experience. That's why vinyl kind of kept a flame burning.
Yeah, there was
during that period.
a few pockets of resistance. I mean, Michael Fremer was one of those champions.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I mean, people were saying whether I'd lost my marbles. You know, are you sure? Don't you know it's over? And I suppose from a commercial point of view, it was really difficult to justify vinyl because of the industry had moved on. But a few of us, we refer to ourselves as diehards, kept realizing that there was more left in the groove. Plus, you know, to see all that wonderful artwork and the albums go to waste, you know, people were giving away their collections.
Yeah.
Not the case anymore, but in those days, classical music, literally garages full became available.
And of course, today we have a resurgence of vinyl, stronger than ever in some ways.
Incredible, which is a fortunate thing for us all, I think. Yeah.
Well, some audio journalists and reviewers have described Doehmann audio turntables as the Formula One of analog. And we all know that there are some wonderful brands out there, some talented people making great analog turntables, great systems. But I presume that they describe your products that way because of the sheer volume of research and development that Doehmann does, and especially your research into material sciences as part of your design process. Looking at the turntables in detail, it seems to me that a lot of that research is focused on resonance minimization. So why is resonance such an important focus for you?
Well, if you shrink yourself down to the size of the diamond that's sitting in the groove interface, and if you were to imagine yourself strapped to that diamond, apart from the fact that the G-forces would turn you into jelly, but just say you could survive the ride, you would hear down in that groove wall, you would hear noise. And if you trace that noise to say, where's this coming from, you would find it's not only the external environment, the room, the speakers, the air conditioning systems, the traffic on the road, you know, all those sorts of noises, but internally in the turntable, you would hear the motor making noise, and you would hear the bearing making noise. They're the two biggest sources of noise. Then you might hear some creaking and twisting, noises, where would they come from? Well, you've got typically a heavy platter, and that's moving, and it ends up turning and twisting and talking and so on, and that would be creating noises into the chassis. Some of them are very audible, others are very, very quiet, but they're still there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you visualize that, you would be able to then say, oh, how do I stop that hearing it where I am right here? Because you're trying to get this purity thing. So that's, I suppose, the philosophical way of visualizing it. But you need tools and technologies to actually quantify that and flesh it out. And then you've got to come up with the idea, how do I solve it?
Yeah. And with a lot of the resonance mapping that Doehmann Audio does, you realise that you can be quite surprised at where the resonance not only propagates from, but how it behaves and interacts.
It interacts with other, and that's where the materials engineering comes in. I mean, fortunately, I was exposed to some incredible, talented engineers during my work with the airlines. Who's one of them whose job he was the materials engineer, and he was like a walking encyclopedia of materials.
And of course, vibration control is paramount in aviation.
You got a problem if it's not addressed. The visualization, I think, leads to then what materials can we use, and if the material isn't available in your own industry, then what other industries out there are doing something that you might be able to recruit and bring in.
That brings me to my next question, actually, because you have a reputation. I'll pause there. Never a good way to start a question. You have a fantastic, you're very renowned amongst the pantheon of what I would say living audio analog designers who have been responsible for some of the best designs. You have a reputation amongst that small group of people as being extraordinary for bringing engineering solutions that are not normally found in audio design from outside industries and bring them into your turntable designs to solve those problems that you were talking about. And that's something that I think makes Doehmann quite unique. I mean, others will do versions of that too, but that's one of your greatest. You've got a big reputation for doing that. So, can you give us some examples of this?
Well, for me, it seems the most logical way to approach it. In terms of, I don't have a machine shop where I've got a lathe or a mill or something, and then everything that I think of has to fit into that lathe or mill.
Those limitations.
Because that to me is a good path to follow, an easy path, and if you've made the investment in that machine, then you've got to maximise your usage out of it. But I feel that would constrain my thinking. So I try to look at the problem, work out the solution, recruit from whatever sources that I can find that would most likely solve that problem, and then figure out how to make it. Which problem is it's the most expensive way to go about it typically, because you do have a bit of R&D, and it's not the easiest and quickest path. But I think it's the path that I think brings the most benefit.
I am aware that Doehmann Audio has sourced a lot of its solutions from the aerospace industry, also the space industry.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And ballistics research labs, things like that. So that's just a fascinating way of looking at things. If we've got a problem to solve here, how do other people that have this problem times 1,000, how do they deal with it? And then maybe they've learnt something that we don't know. Maybe we can incorporate that thinking, which I just love the way you do that.
Yeah, that's to me, it's also I think, fun and enjoyable part of the making things is finding those new materials and approaches and fabrication techniques. And when you actually hear them,
Yes.
I mean, when they finally implement it and realizing that it's made a step change improvement. I mean, some of the stuff that we were playing with, it was 2015, we launched the Helix platform as an extensible platform.
Yes.
I mean, the architecture means that we can change point solutions inside the overall architecture, and just the change in materials technologies. We've auditioned it, and in front of the listening panel and so on, and it's to me really exciting when the thought, how can we reduce, eliminate a particular problem. You go through that process, and then when you finally try it out, and it works.
And it works, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell from the way that you have voiced your products that you are deaf. Exactly when did your hearing loss begin?
Well, apparently Beethoven composed symphonies deaf, so in his favour. Maybe that's I can go the Beethoven defence.
Well, look, voicing is an interesting topic because the way that a product is voiced is really ultimately the final touch in how it can deliver an emotional experience for the listener. So briefly tell us what is voicing, and then how do you go about achieving the wonderful voicing that your products have?
Okay, well, this is an interesting thing, because if you have a look at some of our favourite amplifiers or loudspeakers, and there's lots of them in the world, and you know that's the sound of that particular amplifier, and you really enjoy whenever you experience it. Now, it would be a tube or solid state, that's immaterial, and they have a voice that you know that if I'm somewhere else at a show and you ring me up and say, what's the show like, anything new, and say, oh, I've just heard this amazing amplifier, it's really, really good. You say, how does it sound? And then you describe the sound. That's the voice that you're talking about, and somebody's put that effort in. So now, if enough people hear it and like the sound of it, then the voice is broadly appealing. Now, I always talk about the Pygmalion effect, where you fall in love with your own creation, and it doesn't appeal to a lot of people.
Yes,
doesn't mean that it's not wrong for you.
Like my humour.
Yeah, that's got a quiet taste.
Yeah.
But if enough people, including an independent listening panel, which I rely on, is they keep you heading in the right direction, I call it.
So keep you honest.
Keep you honest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could skew something and make it sound brighter or leaner or thicker or fatter or fuller or, icy cold to treacly, slushy warm, or you can play with things to get these sounds happening. Now, if it appeals to you, then great, congratulations. But it has to, in my opinion, be broadly appealing, and enough people say, that's the sound for me. But that also supports the industry. It means that other turntable designers and manufacturers can rightfully put out wonderful products that sound amazing, and they appeal to a nice audience. So I'm not saying that my way is the only way and the right way or anything like that. I'm just saying this is what we work hard to create, and hopefully enough audiophiles out there, experienced listeners and so on, can identify that signature and go, that's really, really what I'm after.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things that I love about you, Mark, is that you're a real student of the genre, meaning you're passionate about the history of turntable development, the various eras, the schools of design, the previous legendary designers, etc. You're like a walking encyclopedia, and I love conversing with you about those things. Can you recall someone in the past who had a genuine impact on you?
In terms of turntable design?
Yeah.
Look, I have to say, he's recently passed away, but Hideki Nishikawa,
Yes.
from Microseki, who became the Tech DAS progenitor. That to me is really well executed turntable design. Always loved the sound of the original Microsekis. Still to this day, they're holding their value. They're heirloom pieces, beautifully executed. So I was fortunate enough to have met Nishikawa through turntables, and we developed a great rapport. A couple of years ago in Hong Kong, he launched his big Zero, the Tech DAS Zero, and I was fortunate enough to be there in the room. And it was funny, Nishi sort of spotted me standing right at the back of the crowd, and he was doing his presentation, and he stopped and he goes, Mark's son, welcome. And
that's a big acknowledgement.
And I just called out, congratulations on that opus, magnum opus that he built there. So yeah, guys like that, of course, not that I knew them personally, but the people behind Lynn, Thorens, the Neumann people who built the original lathes, the EMT, turntable guys, they're people who took it all the way through to the end. And yeah, for me, they're influences. But the ones that I personally know, of course, look, I Frank Kuzma at shows, always great to chinwag with, have a chat, always make time out for that. Frank Schroeder, they're guys, they're good. I feel that I can walk into one of their rooms and not be seen as being antagonistic, but as being someone who's part of the community.
It's a wonderful community.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that it is. Yeah.
Well, I've spent quite a lot of time with you over the years, and we've
unfortunately
done a lot of shows together, and also I've even this is probably not for viewers' consumption, but I've even had to spend nights in the same room with you, which I'm still suffering trauma from, and the counselling is continuing. But one of the things that I really love about you is that we can be sitting there one moment talking about the weather, or talking about an album or a piece of music we're into right now, and then suddenly you'll get a look on your face and you'll go, oh, I just sort of thought of something. And that something usually ends up being some crazy, amazing new design feature for the next turntable. I just love the way your mind works. Randomly in the middle of a benign conversation, you get these ideas. How do you do that? Have you always been that way?
Oh, yeah, I think so. It is. Well, I think you have to have the problem first. Somebody's got to give you the problem, and then you work on it and the problem is that, well, it's not the problem, but you can't tell when that thing comes through. I mean, I had an idea for part of the design. My son was running on a athletics track at a school event, and it was like 8 a.m. in the morning, and the sun was streaming through the front of the car because it was really cold outside. I was sitting in the car watching the track, and then bingo, the idea just came through. But I'd been thinking about that problem for like 6 months, and finding that
light rays from the heavens.
It was like one of those moments, just bang, there it is.
An angelic.
The voices, not quite, but I was really excited, genuinely excited about that. So I can't. Well, let's say I can't control that. It just happens. I think it's from reading a lot of information, and I'm a voracious appetite for info.
Yeah.
And then that sort of stores away, and then something puts it together. And
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Either
Well,
that, or I need
fun.
to be locked up in a straitjacket.
It's
somewhere.
fun witnessing it. Definitely.
Yeah.
You once shared a story of riding your bike as a little kid amongst Air Force aircraft at an Air Force base. How did that come about?
Right. Well, it was actually my dad who worked with a government aircraft group called the Flying Unit. Were tasked with doing navigational aids around Australia and the nearby regions, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, etc. And when we're coming down to land, a pilot like yourself would follow an instrument landing system. Well, somebody has to adjust those beams, radio beams, etc.
And that was your dad?
That was the people that my dad worked with. And he would take us from school. I couldn't do it today. I mean, all the occupational health and safety and, blah, blah, blah. But back in the 70s.
Come on, kid.
Yeah, come on. we're going to go flying for 2 weeks. So he would take my brothers and myself, or singly or together, and we go flying. And at one point I was in a airport, and there were some big American cargo planes carrying some goods back and forth into Australia. This was Starlifter size cargo planes, and we were allowed to ride push bikes on tarmac. Engineers had push bikes, you see, and as a kid, there's no traffic other than the various goings on the airport. We would ride around the aprons and everything, and I ended up riding up to this big American military plane, and the Marine who was guarding the plane was very friendly. He said, "Do you want to come and have a look through the plane?" It was empty, so there was obviously nothing top secret, and so I got to play up in the cockpit and have a look around and crawl around the American aircraft, and didn't have to sign the Official Secrets Act.
Kid, you can ride your tricycle around here, but just don't go on that major runway over there.
Don't go on that one.
Well, you've been doing this for over 40 years. Now that we know how early you started, it's a long time. What we all want to know is, when are you going to get a real job?
I tried. I failed. This just keeps dragging me back. Look, turntables, it's passion, absolute passion, obsession. I sometimes need to be reminded to get some grounding on it, because it can absorb your every thinking moment. And fortunately, I've a wonderful life partner, Melinda, who understands what this is about, and she's been so supportive of me being able to follow that dream. But yeah, I worked in corporate and IT and other industries, which I always enjoyed, but this thing just kept my focus. And when you drop the needle in the groove on a listening session and it's 1 a.m. in the morning, and I mean, we were here the other day with Jim White from Aesthetics, and after everybody had left, we dropped Spirit of Eden on the system, and we just sat here till it was 1 a.m., wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, for those of you that don't know Mark, he always finds a way to mention Spirit of Eden in every conversation. But Mark, the time has come now.
Plug the album.
For our 10 questions. So I'll be asking you 10 quick questions, and you just give me your whatever comes to mind.
Yep, okay.
So are you ready, my friend?
Not sure. Because all right, well, I'll give it a go. All right.
Well, what is your favourite word?
Right.
That's very Australian, isn't it? Right. That's great. What is your least favourite word?
Similarly.
Is it one of those that you can't
I
say
can't
properly?
say it properly. Just
I can't say that word that means that big seal with the two tusks. Walrus. It's the one I can't say. If you could use one word to describe a great sounding system, what would that be?
Phenomenal.
No? Great. What do you prefer listening to, digital or analog? Be very careful.
Yeah. I prefer my digital on analog.
Ah, okay. I wasn't expecting that answer.
So, because a lot of our vinyl is actually
It is.
somewhere through the chain, it's gone through digital. I prefer analog on analog, but if I'm going to listen to digital, I prefer it on analog. So,
Good answer. Good answer. What sound or noise do you love?
sound or noise going to be musical?
Yeah.
Well, I have to say I'm a fiend for a synthesizer.
Synthesizer?
Yeah, I just love the whole thing.
Now, I'm going to preempt the next section by saying he always also finds a way of introducing craft work into every discussion. What sound or noise do you dislike?
Ooh, there's probably, due to my misophonia, it's a choice between squeaking balloons. You know, there's people who make balloon art.
Yeah.
If I see that somewhere, I run. Or fresh carrots being chomped.
Oh, yeah, the chomping carrot guy.
No.
Everyone's experienced the chomping carrot guy, and then he brings out the celery.
Yeah.
What is your proudest accomplishment?
Ooh. Well, that's a curly one. Proudest accomplishment would be, well, I mean, if I refer to a technical thing, launching the Helix platform in Munich in May 2015, the genesis of the project and the support of friends and the team back here in Australia and even overseas guys who were supporting me, that to stand there and have that launched even in its infancy, that would be I'd say that
moment
in a technical sense,
absolutely,
apart from having two wonderful kids and a wonderful life partner, that they're also things that make me immensely proud. But
okay. Judging from the photo that we saw earlier on, getting a wonderful life partner was a bit questionable.
Yeah. So, somebody had to trick her into it.
So, if you could keep just one album for the rest of your life, which would it be?
Ooh.
Very difficult question.
The Desert Island Disc.
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
One only.
Just one.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to Spirit of Eden. Sorry.
Spirit of Eden. That's two times mentioned.
2 times. I've got 2 mentions in. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of albums.
It is an incredible album. I agree with you.
I mean, you can listen to it 1,000 times, and every time you hear something new, and especially in terms of system. I mean, we listened to a phono stage here last week, the I.O. from Jim White, the Aesthetics I.O. And hang on, I've not heard this album. This is the first time I've heard this album. We're both playing Spirit of Eden.
It's always a wonderful experience as an audiophile when you have that feeling.
And then there was the parlophone that Riccardo Pranasavici from Absolute Sounds in UK had said, "Mark, here, I want you to have this," and because he knew I was crazy about it, and he had an original parlophone, which are really hard to get. And that's different than some of the later ones. So even within the genre of, or not the genre, the recording of that album, there's been some iterations and mixes. So look, it's
okay. So I knew I wasn't going to get a one-word answer out of you for that question. If money were no object, how would you spend your time?
Making turntables.
Sorry,
I know it sounds a fabricator or anything, but I wouldn't. Yeah, wouldn't change.
I wouldn't expect you to say
I wouldn't
anything
take
else.
up golf. It's too hard. I wouldn't take up sailing. It's too hard.
I don't know if you know this, but it takes a lot of balls to play golf the way that I play it. Finally, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Ooh. Like profession, like a life pursuit profession.
Yeah.
I'd love to work out how to give deaf people hearing.
Wow. Okay.
I know
To give them the gift that you enjoy so much.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
your music.
Imagine if there was, and I know that there's been incredible research done, and the cochlear implants and those things, but to take it up to that level of fidelity that you can give someone, I'd say that would be a lifelong pursuit worth doing.
So they can really engage with it totally emotionally and experience what you're experiencing.
Yeah, experience what drug gets released when I listen to music, to have that same experience. And I think, and I know some people who worked on the cochlear project, and the incredible depth that they have to go to find these solutions. I think that would keep me occupied. Yeah.
It's a really wonderful and altruistic answer, and I think I can conclude this interview by saying that knowing you so well, you are one of the most sensitive and altruistic people that I've ever met. Congratulations for your wonderful career so far, which I suspect still has a long way to go.
I want to keep going. Yeah.
And thank you on behalf of the global community of music lovers for the work that you put into your turntables. We love them, and thanks for making the time to meet us and have a chat to us here.
Thank you, George.
And
appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Take care.